Act and therefore can continue to take place virtually, you'll be glad to know. It is only board members that are taking part in the decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are there to provide advice to the board. The agenda and papers have been published on the council website in advance of the meeting. The council will make a recording of the meeting, which is just taking place, and this will be published on the council's YouTube channel and website in due course. Today's meeting will be run virtually via Microsoft Teams. Other elected members and officers may remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or observe. Other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely via Microsoft Teams. There is also some provision for members of the public to speak at the meeting via the public questions or statements that have been submitted in advance. Further highlight, please use the meeting chat function only for the purpose of the meeting, primarily to indicate to the chair that you wish to speak. Please only speak at the chair's invitation. Please say your name before speaking, and please note the importance of turning off microphones and cameras when not speaking, with the exception of the chair. So, welcome everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Councillor Richard Wilkins, lead member for Transport and Digital at Somerset Council. I'll start with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. So I will go to Joe to give any apologies.
Yeah, we've had an apology from Joss Strickland of Hatch Green, and I've not received any others.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to do a section 2, which is a membership update, just to remind everybody who are the members of this board. So I'll go to Natasha to go through that.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Natasha Bates, Service Commissioning Manager for Passenger Transport within Somerset Council. So this is just a quick update on membership, just to clarify that when the board was established, we agreed the organisations to be represented, and this hasn't changed, but the individuals representing them has changed over time, obviously with people coming and going. So just to help us manage the meetings and for Democratic Services to manage membership, what we've done is we've circulated with this agenda our current record of individuals representing each organisation and their deputy where applicable or appropriate, and that's based on our current records and attendance at these meetings. So I'm not proposing to take up time going through it all now, but it's just to say that is there, and if you've got any changes that are required to the individuals representing those organisations, please can you just let Joe Morris know, and then we can make sure we have an accurate record for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. And then we go on to number 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 6th of February 2024. So I'm going to request, does anybody have any amendments, suggested amendments, first of all? I'm seeing no hands, so could I have someone to second first and second the minutes? Show of hands, please. Somebody. Tony to propose and Lee to second. So quick show of hands. Everybody in favour, raise your hands of the minutes. Which I'll do. I think that's carried. Drop them down. Okay. This brings us on to item 4, which is public question time. Now, I believe there was a question submitted by Lee Fletcher. however, he's not attending, and I believe he's withdrawn the question as with an acknowledgement that there's been a resumption of the service of the West of England service of the 374, 375 running around Windmill Hill, and he's put his thanks for making that happen. So question 2, I'll go to Rosa Kell, who's got two questions, I think, or 3. Rosa, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. May I first of all apologise to the board. It looks like this is a coordinated effort to attack you in some way. It is not. It is purely what passengers are telling us. So I'm going to start with the first question. Can the advisory board tell us what advice it's giving Yeovil Town Council, Somerset Council, to ensure that the sale of the bus station and adjoining development at Glover Walks and its new owners, and that it will incorporate a bus station for the benefit of all the visitors and bus and coach passengers of Yeovil?
Okay, I'll respond to that question first of all, Rosa. Thank you for that. Once there are new owners of the site, we will start engagement about the future of the bus station. So I'll go on to question 2, if that's okay, Rosa.
Please. Can the bus advisory board tell us how can Taunton bus and coach station be A, sublet to NHS, and B, sublet to a public, including the promulgation down of all the public liabilities to the Thames Valley and Great Western Omnibus, to allow a vintage bus run, which is welcome. It brings lots of visitors to Taunton. However, I don't understand, and the public will not understand, how can this station be used by the public during a public event, but not on a day-to-day use as a bus station. The station has been closed since COVID. It hasn't reopened. It's considered to be unsafe. How can it be unsafe for the working day of the public, yet be open to the public on an event?
Okay, Rosa. There's a lot to digest there, and we are currently investigating this claim. So we will give you a written response in due course.
Thank you, Chair.
Question 3.
A very simple question 3. I'm sorry, Richard, you've heard this one before. Can the bus advisory board tell us if it knows where the coach and bus fees for accessing the Somerset bus and coach stations are diverted by Somerset Council? Those machines on the parking are named as Somerset Council. The funds should be solely ring-fenced for station repairs and upgrading and the infrastructure in Street, Glastonbury, Wells, Frome, Shepton Mallet, and the other car parks I've checked. The machine clearly says Somerset Council. Does the board know what's happening?
Okay, so the answer to that is currently the coach parking income is collected alongside car parking charges, and due to the nature of the systems, don't separate it. We are, however, looking to use some of our surplus car parking income to support sustainable transport in the same way that we are doing in the Taunton area, where we took the decision in December to support the park and ride. Okay, thank you for that. So I've now got David Redgewell. Questions from David?
Yeah, Richard, as my question is very similar to Rose's on this event at Taunton bus station. I mean, I only found out about it a fortnight ago, to be honest. That's why I wrote it down, because it's so complicated rather than just raise it. I'd be grateful again, because Mike and yourself said we didn't have planning permission as a bus station as yet for that operation there. Although the NHS thing I understand is temporary under COVID, the regulations I've seen from the Department of Health. But nevertheless, there is the issue of passengers joining buses, both special buses we understand to be run by First and Stagecoach, like they were in Penzance, and then the vintage buses. Now, it's all welcome. It's great that we're having a public transport day in Taunton, but there's a safety element down there, and I think we'd like to understand the lease. And I think what is come out of this is the NHS still have the lease on the site, which of course we're hoping very much, Richard, you'll get back from them or find them a new location in Taunton. They can stay where they like in Taunton, but not in the bus station, which we obviously want to see reopened. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's my first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to refer you back that it's a very long question, and we're still investigating exactly some aspects of that question. So we will get back to you in writing.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, it's not an attack on you. It's just we need to just understand what's going on there, really. Thank you very much. The second question really is about similar to Rose's, except I'm aware that under the schedule of 1985 Transport Act and the 2017 Transport Act, that any bus station that's operated by an authority, in the case of whether that's First Group or whether that is the council, that those bus stations have to be open to all operators. A charge is levied on the cost of that bus station to the operators, and that money is supposed to be spent for upkeep. And when I was involved in Wales bus station, we ring-fenced that money from Wales bus station to upkeep the money for Wales in Mendipshire Council. So I'm a little concerned that money does seem to not be ring-fenced, and we can't show a set of accounts that says this is what we're spending on Bridgewater, this is what we're spending on Yeovil, this is what we're spending on Wales, and money might just be going off into other whether it's laudable transport activity in the county, but I think we're in a difficult financial situation in the county. Partnership working with groups and as a way forward. But I think as we've got very little money, that making sure the money collected in the bus station spent by operators. I know First has got exemptions on supported services in Yeovil and Wales, but I just think we'd like to see that money just kept in a pot so it is reinvested and doesn't go off into other schemes. So if that could be looked at, I understand it's a new council, that's why I've raised it. It's something that needs to be worked on, we think.
Yeah, I'm going to refer you back to the response I gave to Rosa on that, because it is complicated the way we collect the money, but we do invest an awful lot of money into. I think you'll find it will be the reverse, but yeah, we will look into that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, so question from Barry. Right. Hello, Barry. Can you unmute, Barry?
No, I've just come in. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right. My first time at a BAB meeting. Should I actually read the question, or has everybody got the text?
If you're happy not reading it, has everybody got the text, or would you like it read out?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay,
maybe it's better if we have it read out. I can read it if you like, or if you've got it in front of you.
I'll run through it quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's all I can say. I can just read the question, just add a couple of comments into it, but I should be able to get through it in 3 minutes. Okay, so my question concerns the situation in West Somerset with the routes, buses of Somerset routes 25 and 28, 28A particularly, that serve Norton Fitzwarren since the timetable changes. We've got a number of ongoing problems, and essentially the new timetable just isn't working. Now, since I wrote the question, I'm aware of some moves to attempt to resolve some of this, which SPP are going to be a part of, and I think the council are involved in. So I don't wish to dwell on this, but I just wanted to raise the issue, and so I'll just run through the question. How are First South Buses of Somerset proposing to resolve the several communicated issues apparent since introduction of their revised Route 25 and 28A timetables. Specifically with regard to Norton Fitzwarren, there is lack of an effective weekday peak inbound service to Taunton between 8:10 and 11:10 in the morning. The reason for this is a 28A peak inbound service now runs through Cotford St Luke and Norton Fitzwarren, but on most days it's full, and by full that's with a considerable number of people standing, up to 20 people standing. So our 9:37 service into Taunton effectively isn't there, given a 3-hour gap for people to catch a morning bus. We've got some ideas to discuss to try and resolve this. Same situation happens in the afternoon. We don't effectively have a peak outbound service from Taunton at the peak time in the afternoon because the reverse direction 28A arrives in the village full, doesn't stop, drives straight through with a number of standing passengers. So we've effectively not got an outbound service from Taunton between 2:55 and 5:45. The 2:55 is a 25, but that's only ever a single decker. The 25 route doesn't seem to be all double decker anymore. And the single decker that works the service occasionally is one of the short town buses. So again, sometimes that runs overcrowded, full up, can't pick up any passengers. It's really a bit of a dire situation, but I think everyone's aware of that. It's been well communicated and we're going to look at it. We have suffered a lot of early running through the village. We've recorded buses running 7-8 minutes early on a number of occasions. I don't know why this is happening. I haven't recorded anything for the last week, and I think that the local managers have dealt with it effectively now. We do still get lots of buses leaving 2 minutes early off the stops, which isn't a major problem, but I do note the Traffic Commissioner guidance states depart no more than 1 minute early, and indeed the neighbouring First companies to the north actually has a charter where they reimburse passengers if their bus leaves the stop more than 1 minute early from the advertised time. So I'm not quite sure why there's variation between the First subsidiary rules on these matters, but I would like to see First South adhere to that same standard if possible. We get many would-be passengers left behind at the bus stop, and of course with the situation now it can be up to 3 hours before the next bus, so clearly this isn't working. The failure to provide timetables at the bus stops, day 12 of the new timetable, the 25 route was completed, so the new timetables are now all in place, and again with the 28. Lots of people having to stand, lots of people put off getting on the bus in the first place if there's only standing spaces available, which is understandable, especially on that 9:37 bus where there's a number of pass holders that would like to use it. We've got a lot of 28As coming through here displaying 28 instead of 28A. I've stopped and spoken to a number of drivers, but it's still happening. Yesterday morning's 28A went through displaying 28. The ticketer software isn't working for the bit of the route between Bishop's Lydeard and Cross Keys that comes round through Cotford and through Norton Fitzwarren. The software, which I don't understand myself, but the drivers are telling me it's not working, it's not displaying the stops correctly. They're not able to issue, say, a ticket from Norton Co-op to Cotford St Luke. Because
can I hurry you up, Barry, because you're running out of time, really?
Yeah. So, because the ticketer system isn't working, I think that's working against the app as well, because the 28A buses are not tracked on the First Bus app, and that is feeding through, of course, to bustimes.org. There's no tracking of these buses, so that needs dealing with. Number of errors in a printed timetable and some corrections that need doing, which I hope that we're going to have in hand soon. And just to summarise, these problems are extending throughout the Dulverton and Minehead corridors and beyond. They're impacting heavily on passengers using or attempting to use buses on these routes. A significant amount of time and money has recently been invested by several people and organisations to encourage folk to make greater use of their rural bus services. As long as this seriously substandard service remains in place, we risk undoing so much of that good work as passengers revert to their personal vehicles to make journeys that really ought to be made by bus. Once these people give up bus travel, they're unlikely to return to the mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Just to let you know that Somerset Council, myself included, met with First South West yesterday to discuss all these issues and concerns. And I believe that First will be meeting with the bus partnership as well later in the week to further discuss them. So I will leave that there. Thank you, Richard. Finally, we have a question submitted by Emery Taylor, who's a Strode College student and Somerset Bus Partnership management team member. I believe he is not attending, so I'll read out the question. The 1620 Wells to Yeovil service 77 is scheduled to stop at Strode College at 1647. However, over the last few months, it has on over 10 occasions skipped the college and thus left students trying to get home stranded. This has had a negative effect on myself and other students who are now worried that they may not be able to catch the bus home. The issue does not only affect students on the day itself, but also has a major long-term effect on reducing the overall reliability of the service, which could have detrimental impacts for the students' future transport choices and the overall passenger numbers of this service. This issue has not been resolved despite multiple complaints from various students to First Bus National Contact Centre. What is First West of England and Somerset Council going to do to ensure this issue doesn't happen again? And in response to that, we have raised this matter with the operators previously when we have been made aware of it happening. This is a commercial service and it is for the operator to correct, but we will continue to raise the issue. We will also discuss this matter with Strode College. Okay. Thank you for that, everybody. We'll go on now. That's questions over. So we'll go to item 5, which is the Zebra 2 update. And I'm going to invite Natasha to provide an update.
Thank you. So in terms of Zebra 2, you've probably all seen the recent press releases from the end of March, but since our last board meeting, we have had confirmation that our Zebra 2 funding bid has been successful. So that's obviously fantastic news and a brilliant opportunity to introduce zero emission vehicles into the public bus network in Somerset. The bid was submitted in partnership with First South West, and we bid for 2.2 million of grant funding, which is being then coupled with almost £13 million of operator funding from First South West. So just to say firstly, thank you to everyone involved at First in this bid. Obviously a lot of hard work and detail went into the bid application, and we're really pleased that First are investing in the vehicles and infrastructure in the county, which is brilliant. So just to kind of give a bit of information on the project will see the introduction of 25 electric vehicles into the network, and that will be a combination of both single and double decker vehicles. And the required charging infrastructure will also be installed at First's Taunton depot on Hamilton Road. And so once the vehicles are in operation, they will be operated on the following services. So the 28 from Minehead to Taunton, the 21 from Bridgewater to Taunton, and those will be interoperable with the 22 from Wellington to Taunton, and then also on the services 1 and 2, which are the Taunton town services. So those routes have been selected by the operator following discussion with the council, and they were really looking at their commercial routes and where the investment for those vehicles would be the most viable. So work has commenced on the project now the funding's been agreed, and we will continue to update through the board as and when we can at these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Just to see if we've got any questions from board members to Natasha on this update. Oh, Peter.
Firstly, just to congratulate, firstly, Somerset Council, but especially First South West, given the scale of investment. I think many of us amongst the bus users are greatly reassured to see First South investing in its Somerset fleet. Just a small point, these are long distance routes, so hopefully as part of the kitting out of these vehicles there will be USB chargers on the buses. Small point, but an important one for users.
Okay, Natasha, do you have a response to that?
I will double check that with First in terms of the specification for the vehicles. I'm sure it's on there, but I will double check for you.
I think James is going to jump in on that.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, I'm 99% sure on that, but Peter, I will confirm. But I'm 99% sure they haven't been ordered yet, so I can't guarantee. And we are working with our engineering colleagues to, whilst we'll be ordering the vehicles pretty soon, we do have the opportunity to spec those out. So I really want to make this opportunity to make sure we spec it to what we need in Somerset rather than just a standard specification. So we'll bear that in mind.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, Peter.
I think there's a question from David.
Yes, so James, I've worked with James Freeman, now Doug, and we've specified 2 wheelchair spaces on the fleet in West of England. I think Rob's on the call as well, Saunders, but I think we got about 130 vehicles that are now wheelchair accessible with two wheelchairs. Richard, if you're taking your family out, both partners are in a wheelchair, then obviously that is a great situation to have with First putting extra wheelchair spaces into the vehicle. So I wonder if that could be looked at for the Somerset operation as well. And the other thing is the Wi-Fi connectivity as well on the vehicles to make sure we've got good Wi-Fi reception where possible. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, I'll defer back to James on that, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Yes, so I mean, as Natasha knows, I'm really keen, and Peter Travis knows from the Bus Partnership, I'm really keen to make sure we listen to what people of Somerset need from these services to make sure that that's considered as part of the specification. So we're in no rush to finalise the specification yet, but absolutely over the coming weeks and months, we'll be making sure we're engaging through the Bus Partnership and through the Council to get those requirements fed in. So I'll take a note of that one. Thank you.
Okay, I think I got David next. I'm trying to remember if David is a member of the board. Maybe you'll have to remind me. Not hearing David.
Chair, it's Jo Morris here. I don't think David is actually a member of the board.
Okay, so I'm sorry, David. We're not going to take any questions from non-board members. Is that the same with Mick Lerry as well? Yeah,
I think so. It is. I'm not actually sure which organisation Mick is actually representing today. So.
No, I suggest you channel your questions through the Bus Partnership or straight to us at Somerset Council or direct to the bus operators. This is a board meeting for board members at this point. Okay, think we've actually exhausted that. So thank you, Natasha. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's Sam. Could we just ask Mr. Redwell to turn his camera off, please?
Yeah. I don't know if it is. I think it's Susanna Clements who's got her camera on as well.
No, whoever's camera that was on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So we'll go to item number 6. Which is I'm going to invite John Perrett to present the coordination of bus timetable changes.
Morning, everybody. My name is John Perrett. I'm Service Manager for Transporting Somerset. And this is by way of a reminder really to board members and particularly to operators about the coordination of bus timetable changes going forward. So at the Bus Advisory Board meeting in October 2023, members agreed to 2 main timetable change dates per year, with flexibility maintained for unforeseen or emergency operational issues and seasonal changes where it wasn't possible to confirm changes at the 2 main agreed dates. The second change for 2024 is due on the 2nd of September. And a reminder that timetable and bus service changes, registrations and consultations need to take place and the board meetings relating to the September change. So just to give you a reminder of the dates, the consultation period for the next change commences on the 24th of June through to the 21st of July. That's the 28-day consultation period with Somerset Council, Bus Advisory Board members and key stakeholders. The next Bus Advisory Board meeting is on the 25th of June, so it is there that we would invite operators to introduce changes to the board for consideration and discussion. From the 22nd of July to the 1st of September is the registration period, the 42-day registration period where no further changes can generally be made, with the introduction date on the 2nd of September 2024, and then on the 15th of October 2024, where the next Bus Advisory Board will be setting the dates for 2025. So that's the process. And operators are, just a reminder, are asked to discuss their changes with Somerset Council in sufficient time for the proposals to be considered and reviewed ahead of the board meeting in June. And a pro forma for that purpose will be sent out to operators ahead of this date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and any questions from the board members? We've got David.
Thanks, Richard. John, please, they're not on the call this morning, which is disappointing. But WECA's got its change 1 week before Somerset's changes, which we noticed with First West of England made putting timetables and the displays up quite slow. I wonder, it would certainly, I mean, I'm not a great lover of having 2 first companies in Somerset. I've made that point to Janet Bell, the chief exec, but we have at the moment. So can we just coordinate that better between across the county? I mean, Somerset is not just a county council. Sorry about Somerset Council. It's obviously North Somerset and Baines as well. So, and coordinating the services in and out of Wales and the through services to Bristol, which I very much welcome from Taunton and Bridgewater. That's excellent news. But we do need to make sure the coordination is better. And the other thing for James, he was just, James, we welcome that timetable. I very much do. There's a few errors in it. But John, can we have a look at why we've only got the 174 between Wales and Bath shown, when actually we've got 4 other routes that have come out of Wales, including 171 and 173. So for coordinating, Richard, we need to make sure they're all in there, but it's a step in the right direction on the timetables. But perhaps we could get it corrected on the website. I appreciate it'll be September before we get a book. Thanks very much.
Okay. I don't think there's much to answer there, is there, John?
I think in terms of the coordination for September, I think we have the same dates. And yes, we will be talking to WECA about next year's dates ahead of the Bus Advisory Board on the 15th of October. So hopefully we can come back to say that we've agreed dates with WECA. It is difficult when we're surrounded by a number of local authorities and they've all got slightly different arrangements, but we are aware that most of the cross-border services come over from the north, and therefore that's really the key date for us. So we will attempt to ensure that we coordinate better, certainly for the Easter change next year. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Mansell.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, my question, as I think this paper sort of follows from what the experience has been in April with the changes, and this is clearly very helpful. I do still, though, have a bit of a concern about how the voices from local bus users are going to be heard in this process. So I hope that can be made clear, because at the moment when changes are being proposed, there's not really the opportunity. There's not a clear opportunity for the local bus users to feed in. Clearly, we will try and work from this, and it looks like they will be announced 25th of June. But how does this consultation process work? Who do you feed the information to? How is the information about any changes made available? There's nothing I can see which actually explains what the process will be beyond reporting it to the 25th of June meeting. So there may need to be a bit of thought given to that, please. And connected to that, when there are changes, we're often hearing that bus users have gone down, but there's no information published. There's no statistics of which are really provided to show that. So when changes are proposed, can we actually have the information to explain why the changes are thought necessary? And I think as a general point, there's a lack of statistics on bus use being published, especially by route, and it would be really helpful to the users to be able to see that and understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I'll just go back to John to give a response to that.
I think in terms of the changes and the sharing of the details, when we did the last change, we did provide, or obviously the operators provided information to Somerset Bus Partnership to have a look at their proposals and timetables. I know in particular, First West of England met with the bus partnership and discussed their changes and things like that. So we would certainly encourage that. Obviously, there is a period at which 70 days at which services are registered. We don't expect operators to go much further back than that, because there's quite a lot of work to do with changes and things like that. But the whole point of this is to get the Bus Advisory Board meeting literally the day after the consultation period starts, so that we do allow enough time for the information to be shared as widely as possible through the board, and to allow operators to meet with Bus Partnership if necessary to discuss those changes in detail. So that's what we're trying to encourage in many ways, and hopefully that'll improve as we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I've got Peter. Peter Travis.
Thank you, Richard. Firstly, to say that we very much welcome the timetable that John has just outlined. I think this is exactly what the enhanced partnership should be doing. And what is also happening is that, particularly with First South and First West of England, we're now having a process of dialogue about various routes, talking to them about route improvements, proposing route improvements, and they're open to those suggestions. And there is very much a much more constructive approach being adopted by them and hopefully by us, and it's beginning to work. It's still the start of a process, but would like to thank both of those first groups for their willingness to talk with us, to listen to us, and to make changes. So I think it's a much more encouraging situation than there has been for some time, and long may it continue, long may it develop. Just to echo Councillor Mansell's point, yes, we would very much like more statistics. I'm sure Natasha is banging out lots of statistics and gathering them, but it would be great if more statistical information could be shared so that we all know what the real situation is. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think again that was generally a statement, and so I think we'll move on then. So item 7 is the update from operators on the £1 fare, government £2 fare, and any other relevant updates. So I'm going to invite. Oh, hello. Hello. Who's that? No.
I think I've just muted them, so you should be okay now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to invite operators to provide any updates. So who wants to make a start on that? James, good.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, just to give you a quick overview in terms of where we are for this calendar year. Bear with me whilst I just get the screen up properly. So I'll just start with overall passenger performance for buses of Somerset within the county. So looking at January to April month today, April is as of middle of April, not today, just to be clear. So in terms of, I mean, looking particularly at the orange line, in terms of where we are versus prior year, in the main, we're looking at growth versus prior year. On average, across the whole of the year, you've got to be a bit cautious with April because of where Easter fell this year versus last year, and hence why you're seeing a bit of a spike in early April. But if you look at it collectively for the whole of January through to middle of April, we're looking at about 7 to 8% up in terms of prior year, in terms of performance, which is positive given we had quite a strong performance and growth last year, and a number of services have come out from last year as well. So there are a number of routes which are particularly performing strong. To give you some example, the 25 is up 35% on last year. The 28, 41. Sorry, this is in the last 4 weeks. And the 54 is 54% up versus prior year. So the devil is in the detail, but generally speaking, it is looking positive. If I look specifically at the performance of the £1 fare, some really strong growth again versus prior year, but it is starting to slow down as the year progresses. But to be honest, that is no surprise and nothing to be concerned of. A lot of that is driven just through very, very strong growth at the early part of last year. So the passenger numbers are holding steady month on month, and still remaining strong versus last year. But I would anticipate that will continue to slow further down as we start to see that stronger growth coming through from last year. In terms of our punctuality, so just as a reminder, we measure punctuality predominantly on STA, and what you can see here, just to kind of be clear, if you look at the far right, where it says 2024 week 5, so this is our financial year, so week 5 is last week, just to help you, and then that's looking every week previous to that, and you can see there in week 2 2024, that's when the network changes got introduced. To be honest, I'm quite disappointed. I had hoped through a lot of the work we had done to try and change the network, with punctuality very key to that, we would have started to see some improvement in terms of the STA, and we haven't. So we're doing a lot more work, as Richard alluded to, some of it of which we talked about yesterday, just to ascertain what are the key drivers of this at the moment. And also we're working with Peter Travis and other members of the bus partnership and bus user groups to make sure any insight is being fed into us locally so that we can start to ascertain what the challenges are and start to rectify them. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks we will start to see that turn around, because it's certainly not where I would hope it would be, particularly given a main focus in those changes a few weeks ago around punctuality. A bigger concern for us at the moment, to be honest, is around lost mileage. So as you can see there, we set ourselves a goal of lost mileage at around 1% across our entire network. And again, similar pattern, if you look at the top left here, week 4 being the most current week, working back through that. In the past 3 to 4 weeks, we've started to see an escalation in terms of lost mileage versus where we were doing previously, which is pretty strong. And as you can see in the bottom right hand side of that, that is predominantly being driven by challenges with vehicles. And there's a few things that are driving that, which we're reviewing. First of all, is we're having some challenges around coolant leaks, which are continue to happen and causing us a problem. That is not just an issue within Somerset, it's a general problem nationally, and also a supply problem. And what that is doing is driving up our number of vehicles that are being off the road, particularly on the weekends when we see an increase in terms of vehicles that are required to operate the service. So a lot of that lost mileage is being caused by the weekends. So there's a team currently looking at that. In fact, I spoke to them first thing this morning to ascertain what we're doing in terms of our processes and supply to get that fixed ASAP. In the meantime, what we have done is we have managed to secure 3 single street lights, which were due to go to Glasgow, but we've convinced our national colleagues that they won't go to Glasgow from Solent, they'll come to Somerset. We've got 3 street lights due to arrive. 2 of them are due to arrive in Taunton tomorrow, and 1 of them will be arriving on Friday. They just need to be specced up for Somerset, and they'll be ready to go into service. So that will help us in terms of dealing with the number of vehicles that we need, and particularly around making sure we've got spares as well. Up till Monday, we didn't, because of the issues we were having around the coolants, we didn't have any spares available. We've now rectified that. We now have a spare, but we'll be able to have an additional 2 spares once these street lights come into effect from tomorrow. So with those changes, I'm not saying it'll be down to 1% by the end of this week, but those street lights particularly coming in will definitely help start to alleviate the problem and start to see it coming down over the coming weeks. But it is a very, very top priority, not just for Buses of Somerset, for First South, to rectify that problem, because it is disappointing to see the lost mileage so high, given where it has been up till this point. That's my update, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Do we have any other operators? I forget now.
Hi, Richard. I'm from First West of England.
Fantastic.
So I'll give you a very brief overview, because I know we've spoken a lot recently, and James has given an update which is quite relevant to us as well. In terms of passenger figures, you'll probably have seen the press release we put out a couple of months back. So we had a very strong 2023, 6 million more passengers across our area than we did the year before. And we've seen on our Somerset routes a similar, not quite as much as we've had in the urban areas, but we've still seen some encouraging passenger numbers. In terms of punctuality, we've solved a lot of issues from the 7th of April, certainly with Frome, where we've actually put on quite a few more journeys than we had. But we know that the new routes we've introduced are going to take some bedding in. They're extremely long, and you know, if we manage to get from Bristol deep into Somerset without coming across half a dozen roadworks, that's usually quite a good day for us, unfortunately, the way it looks. But we've got a plan in September to improve that further. We've got the Perspective AI tool, and that collates all the GPS information from every bus, from every journey, and gives us has proven very effective in giving us good reliable timetables. So we think once we get to the second iteration in September, we'll improve things even further. And once we've gained some experience of running those routes, but generally it looks so far like it's been well received, and they're running pretty well. We've had a few issues with in Glastonbury with Windmill Hill, which we've sorted with John now, which is good. So yeah, hopefully things will bed in over the summer, and then we'll come back in September with some new timetables. We'll probably be able to share what we'll do. Hopefully, just some minor tweaks, rather than having to do some major surgery. But let's see. But hopefully we'll have those in May and June to share. Probably more like June. In terms of our reliability in Wells, where most of our Somerset routes are based, we've got a quite stable workforce. We have a fully staffed depot, and yeah, it's going well from that point of view. In terms of the challenges ahead, the end of the £2 fare is constantly on the horizon. In theory, in December, it's for the routes we run, which are mostly quite long distances. We're having to weigh up what we can take for granted, and a £2 fare to get from Street to Bristol might be something that we can't, it doesn't work out as affordable. I mean, the cost per mile is remarkably cheap. So we'll need to work out how we approach that, because that will be difficult, and it'll be it's going to be a bit of a transition for everybody, depending on where it lands. If central support for bus fares continues, then great, because it's certainly playing a role in the passenger growth we've had in the area. And then finally, just looking well into the future, we in West of England, similar to Taunton, we've had some successful zebra bids. We're rolling out 92 buses, most of which are in Bristol, but the bit of interest is that we'll be putting 22 of them into Weston-super-Mare depot, where we'll be running them on a long distance route into Bristol, which you might be saying, well, what's that going to do with Somerset? Which is fair, but it should give us some experience of running electric buses on long distance routes, which have quite similar characteristics to what we run in Somerset. So I think that's a really so far nationally with our experience with electric buses, it's good not to go first and to get some experience. So I'd encourage you come and give them a go on the X1 into Bristol when they arrive, hopefully in the course of next year. But hopefully we'll get some really good experience with a view to a future electrification in our routes based out of Wells. So yeah, that's my update.
Are there any other operators? Or I think that may be it.
Yeah. No, don't forget South West Coaches. That's harsh.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, dear.
Oh, Richard. Oh, don't worry about us. Yeah, fine.
How could anyone forget you, Peter?
Yeah, honestly, thanks, Lee. At least you remembered my name. It's fine. Right, anyway, South West Coaches. Yeah, reiterating what the first guys said, really. We're seeing slight growth across our network. However, the devil is in the detail, and that goes alongside service changes that we've made, and a couple of loss of sort of buses in our network, I suppose, that we've made in the changes in the last year across the 96, the 81 and the number 1 service. So yeah, it's not as clear a picture as it would be had we not made those changes in the year on year. But we are seeing slight growth. I would suggest that the £2 fare cap has got to a plateau with us now and is probably making no real growth or impact at this point. And I'd always sound the sort of bell of warning is I just wonder what will happen in the future when that comes out, and the problems that we may face once that is taken away, even if it is done on a sliding scale. So I think we found the plateau at that point with regards to that effectiveness of new passengers and people wanting to use buses because of it. We have recently obviously released, as you're aware, the number 1 service and the new timetable on that on the 15th of April. That's gone as well as any timetable change and sort of launch can do. We have had a few teething problems that have also linked and run on to the 667 as well, but we are working on that, and we'll be coming to John and the other guys probably with a couple of little timetable tweaks we'd like to make, because there's a couple of timing issues. So rather than, obviously we're going to have to do it probably outside of the timetable change dates, but it's just tweaking the times in order to keep an effective service, and shouldn't really have any other effect other than making the service more appealable to some of our school passengers. We've also recently re-employed a gentleman called Ian Cook, who I also believe is on the call. He's joined us as our new services manager, and specifically what Ian will be looking at the beginning of his tenure with us is punctuality. As you all know, the road works have just been, the state of the roads, the state of traffic, etc., have just been an absolute nightmare for us operators. So specifically, he's going to be working on punctuality with us in order to try and produce better timetables across the board for our passengers, and for our drivers as well, because I can never forget those guys. They're working hard out there to try and keep us to keep the show running effectively and smoothly, and they don't half take some stick on the roads out there with the conditions that they are. So Ian specifically, I'd like to welcome him, because he's going to be working hard on punctuality for us and timetable tweaks, etc., going forward. But yeah, that's about it. I'm also massively interested to see how the first guys get on locally with the Zebra and the electric buses, because as Robert sort of said, is not going first as a small operator. It would be, we want to be in that market, but obviously it's a huge risk for us just being local. But I think that if there's a Zebra 3 in the future, we'll see how the first guys go in our area, probably chat with them and see how we get on. We'd love to be part of it if there's a Zebra 3 comes up, and we'd love to have investment in our area.
Fantastic, thank you, Peter. I better ask about any other bus operators on the call before I forget anybody else.
Yeah, because that would be remiss of you, wouldn't it, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, awful. I'll take that as a no. I'm not going to take questions at this point because we've got a lot to get through. So I'm going to go on to, and if you do have questions for any particular operator, I suggest you go direct to them. So I'm going to move straight on to Action 8, which is the draft bus service improvement plan, the BSIP for 2024. So I'm going to invite Natasha back to present this. Hi, Natasha.
Hi, thank you. I do have a presentation to share, but just before we get into the BSIP review document for 2024, I do have a update now on the current BSIP and the £1 fare in Taunton. So if it's okay, I'll just cover that before I share my screen. So we just wanted to provide an update on the BSIP funded £1 fare scheme in Taunton. As I think you're all aware, as part of the BSIP, we've been trialling lower fares in the Taunton town zone in the form of the £1 fare. So the aim of that initiative was to really encourage bus travel, drive up patronage and aid in the recovery from COVID. And the scheme has been really successful in terms of driving up that patronage. I think there's been about 30% rise in bus use in Taunton, which has been really good. But as a result, we've had to review the scheme and the fares, and we do need to revise the fares slightly in order to continue maintaining a lower fare, but ensuring that it remains sustainable within the BSIP funding available. So with that in mind, from the 1st of June from this year, we will be revising the fare. So we will be moving to a £1.50 for an adult single and an 80p for a child single. And what we'll do is we will continue to monitor that and understand the impact of the revised fare, and we'll review that again towards the end of the calendar year. And then that will coincide with the end of the government's national £2 fare scheme, or the end as we know it at the moment, and see what happens with that. So in terms of the park and ride within Taunton, just to clarify that will be maintained at the £1 fare because it's part of a separate BSIP initiative. But we really just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the upcoming change, and a press release will be following from our communications team later today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tasha. I will invite some questions from the board. Anybody got any questions? No. Surprising. Okay. Right. Yep. Got the review there.
Yep. You can see that. Okay. Can you? Yep. Okay. So moving on to the actual BSIP review. So just to give a little bit of background, and I think everyone's probably aware of it, but just to make sure everyone completely understands. So we have our original BSIP was produced in 2021, and that was in response to the government's national bus strategy, Bus Back Better. And we had to set out our high-level ambition for public transport in the county and bid for a share of the funding that was available at the time. So we then did a high-level review of that BSIP in 2022, which was just updated slightly to reflect the funding that had been allocated. We were due to review again in 2023, but that was postponed at the request of the DfT, who asked us to wait until they had revised their guidance and released the new guidance. So that guidance was released at the beginning of this year, and that has required local transport authorities to review their BSIPs again in line with the DfT requirements, and those need to be submitted and published by the 12th of June. So the DfT have been very clear that this particular review is not a new bidding document. There's no new funding available at this stage, but we do have to review the BSIP and submit it in order to release the final tranche of BSIP funding that we've been allocated. So we know what we're getting for 24-25, but in order to have that released to us, we need to complete the review and submit that on time. So that's what's happening there. In terms of the BSIP review, there's 3 key themes. And the first one is around updating our baseline to reflect the 23-24 position, so where we've come from to where we are now. Setting out the improvement programme for 24-25, so looking at what we've been able to deliver with our BSIP funding and what we are still going to deliver with that by the end of March 25. And then a section on our plans and ambitions for 2025 and beyond, and that has to be linked to our local transport plan so that they're both aligned and trying to achieve the same goals and visions. And then just to give an overview of the process, so what we've done to date and what we still need to do. So we've had consultation with operators, so we've met with the larger operators across the county, talked to them about the ambition and proposals, and had feedback on what we should be including in the BSIP. We've consulted with the bus passenger representatives, and we've done that through the Somerset Bus Partnership and also through the bus user and stakeholder group, where we did a presentation and gathered feedback there. Obviously now we're consulting with the Bus Advisory Board through today's meeting, and we'll gather feedback at the end of the presentation. And then we'll be asking for letters of support from operators to support the BSIP that we will be submitting, but we'll follow that up after this meeting. And then once we've had feedback from today and we've made some final changes, any final changes to the BSIP, we will be taking that forward to our Planning and Transport Subcommittee on the 23rd of May for formal approval. And then once that's done and completed, we will be submitting that to the DfT by the deadline of the 12th of June. And alongside the BSIP process, we also need to complete bus connectivity assessments. So the DfT have recently produced guidance on what they require from bus connectivity assessments, and they are also due in on the 12th of June, so the same day as the BSIP. So we're just working our way through the guidance at the moment, understanding what's required, and we will be contacting operators shortly to request any outstanding data that we need. So some of it we've probably already got through the BSIP process, but there may be some gaps in data. So don't be surprised if we contact you in the next couple of weeks asking for more information, please. Okay, so that covers kind of the process and what we've been doing, and then I'll go into a little more detail around the BSIP review document now. That was circulated with the agenda, so you should have all seen a copy of that document. So I'm not proposing to go into masses of detail around the content, but I'm just going to cover each section and what we've covered under those areas. So firstly, just to clarify that the version that came out with the agenda is a Word document. So it's not the final kind of polished version. It's a version we've produced in Word so that we can make changes to it before it goes to our design team. What we've done is we've tried to reduce the length of the document. So the DFT have asked us to try and make the BSIP more concise where possible. So it is still a long document, but it is a lot shorter than the original version. So we've tried where possible to condense things down and still complying with the requirements from the DFT guidance as to what they want to see in our BSIPs. You'll note from the draft version that there are elements that have got highlight in it, and that's just where we're waiting for facts and figures, and we'll need to make those final changes. So the general principles and proposals within the document won't actually change significantly, but there will be some final amendments to make sure everything is accurate and correct before we send it through to the design team. And they will hopefully then make it look a much more professional document, more along the lines of the original BSIP we submitted. So under section 1, just to give an overview of what's going to be in there, so we'll have the full word from our lead member, Richard, and we've got that, so we've just got to add that into the document. We will produce the executive summary once the document's finished, just to give that overview of what the document is covering. And then section 1 also talks about our bus vision, and that's linked very much to our local transport plan, emerging vision, and also the national bus strategy aims, so that it's all aligned. Then section 2, that covers our current bus offer. So we have there set out the challenges with operating services within Somerset and a rural authority. We've highlighted the progress we've made, particularly around passenger numbers and the recovery from COVID. The improvements in our bus fleets across the county. So whilst we may not have changed the age of or overall average age of the fleet, the actual makeup within the bus fleet has really improved, and we're seeing the much older vehicles having moved out of the county, and we're getting much more Euro 5 and a lot more Euro 6 engines operating on our services. And also the improvement in the move to contactless. So where we're able to provide contactless options across all of the services, we've seen that there's been a shift with how people pay for their tickets, so many more passengers are paying by contactless rather than cash on the bus. This section also includes a summary of the results from our recent bus passenger survey, highlighting kind of things that are working well, things that are maybe not so good and that we need to address through the BSIP. We've also covered the makeup of the Somerset bus network, showing the proportion of commercial routes and also subsidised routes and where they operate within the county. And then we've also conducted a little activity around strengths and weaknesses of the current offer. So identifying those DFT BSIP goals and kind of where we're doing well and where we've got some best practice, and also where there are some weaknesses, and that gives us those opportunities to develop that within the BSIP. Okay, section 3. That's the improvement programme for 24-25. So in here we've set out what we've achieved through the BSIP to date, so what we've already delivered, what's up and running, where things are going well, and where we've got some really good best practice that we can use for the future, and also where we've got some lessons learnt and we'll apply that to our future proposals and schemes for the BSIP. And then there's a section on what we've still got planned with the BSIP funding, and so what we will deliver by March 2025. And then there's also, aside from the BSIP funding, there's other things that we've achieved outside of that or that we will achieve. And that's obviously the contactless payments I talked about, the 2 fixed timetable change dates per year. We've got QR codes on bus shelters in Taunton and Yeovil that have been rolled out. And then we'll have the Zebra 2. So whilst that's still government funding, it's outside of BSIP. So we've noted that in here as well. And then moving on to section 4. So this is the section which sets out the ambition for 2025 and beyond. So what we've done here is we've drawn on the original BSIP document. So where we didn't have funding to deliver everything we'd hoped to do, we've retained that ambition, and then we've worked on that and developed it further so it's still relevant to what we want to achieve. We've incorporated the feedback from key stakeholders to make sure that's reflected in our ambition as well. And then we've linked all of that to our emerging local transport plan vision and also the DFT requirements to make sure we're covering what's required from there. I think it's really important to point out at this stage that that section on the ambition is all subject to securing additional funding from government. So without that additional funding, we won't be able to deliver those proposals. They'll still remain our kind of ambition for the future. So it's really important that we can try and secure that additional funding to be able to deliver some of this when those opportunities arise. And then this section also includes a timeline, so a bit more of a visual to show what our 4-year plan is in terms of each of those proposals and when we'll be delivering things if we get funding, and also the longer term overarching 10-year plan as well. It just sets it out a bit more clearly so you can see what we would hope to achieve. And then under section 5, we've got the targets, performance and monitoring. So we have our original BSIP targets set out in that document, and we've gone through and reviewed them and updated them where possible, showing kind of what we've been doing to monitor them and what the activity and results, the performance is against each of those. You'll note that obviously some of those schemes were not funded, so those targets aren't achievable, but we've made notes against those and explained where we're doing things slightly differently or where it's just not possible. And alongside all of this target performance and monitoring, we'll have those bus connectivity assessments I referred to earlier, and that will become an annual activity that the DFT will expect us to submit. And then also around performance and monitoring, the DFT are reviewing future arrangements, and so that's yet to be determined, but we are anticipating new guidance coming out shortly. So once we've got that guidance, we'll review what we need to put in terms of our next BSIP review, potentially next year. And then the final section is section 6. Now, we understand that that section will be the kind of part of the document that's used by Treasury to look at their future spending review and work out how much funding is needed in the future across the whole country to deliver everybody's ambition. So they'll be using that in terms of budget setting. And what we've been asked to do is to put indicative costs in where we know them. So what we've done is for each scheme, we've input a cost based on the information we have available and looking at inflation and the kind of other things that might impact those costs. So we understand that there will be some further guidance due very shortly from the DFT on this section. So hopefully that will be very shortly, because obviously we've got a tight deadline to meet. But I think what will come from that is they will just want us to tweak the presentation of this section so that everyone's doing the same thing. So we'll wait to see what comes out on that. And the DFT have asked us to make sure that our ambition is on par with the original BSIP. And I think we are doing that. We are matching what we're asking for in the first round of BSIP. And they anticipate another review in 2025. So I think at that point, we'll probably have that opportunity to then refine our proposals and the costs in more detail. And we'll be able to link that more closely to the local transport plan, because by that point, we should have a much more evolved document, either completed or nearing completion at that point. And so, yeah, that gives a quick overview as to the document that we've provided. And now we'd really like to just give an opportunity for people to ask questions, provide any comments or feedback. We're looking to see if we've got general support for the BSIP document. And like I said, we'll be asking operators for letters of support as well. So thank you.
Can I just say, before I bring in some questioners, it looks like we've got a few already, that I think that you've done some fantastic work on this. It's a very clear document and it sets everything out very specifically. I just think your team has to be commended on the work that you've done on this. So I'll go to David Redgewell first of all.
Thank you, Richard. So there's a few points I'd like to raise. First of all, with the connectivity document, the Department for Transport is putting emphasis on making sure buses don't stop at the borders, and the CPT's also issued some guidance on that, which I was reading very carefully with another local authority in the area earlier this week. So I understand and I agree that working with the rest of Somerset through WECA and North Somerset is very good, but we do need to make sure that we particularly encompass the network into Dorset out of Yeovil, which is very much one network, and again into Devon, and routes like the 24, which is run by South West Coaches' sister company, Beeline, between Salisbury and Frome, to make sure that this, and Frome up to Chippenham, to make sure we are making sure that the region is well connected. Obviously, we'd like to see the 77 scrapped and become 377, so we've got connectivity between Bristol and Yeovil, as the train service is quite sparse on that route. On the other issues, we need to understand where we are with First Group and South West Coaches Group and Stagecoach and Go Ahead are not on the call today, where we are with drivers, because the DFT is asking about staffing and then what we're doing to recruit staffing. And again, in adjacent local sites, we're talking about more advertising on bus stops and shelters again, to make it clear that we need to have bus drivers, maintenance staff, cleaning staff. I think we need to bottom out with first the issue of Yeovil bus depot, the outstation. We don't seem to have reached the conclusion to that yet. And then we can't do anything on this today, but once we know who the new Police and Crime Commissioner is, we need to understand what the community safety partnerships are around our bus stations. And I'm very grateful to Richard and to Bill for keeping all the CCTV working, and that was giving me some sleepless nights with safety at Wales, for instance, with pastures. So we need to go through that. And then on disability, we do need to look carefully at this, Richard, at how we are picking up drop curves and castle curves and what our ambition are. And I come back to another bit in the guidance about integration with National Express and Megabus and rail. And it's nice to see Richard Gibson from Cross Country Trains on this call. But we need to make sure that the rail bus integration is good. And that reminds me of Castle Carey, where it's not good for a wheelchair, Natasha, to be put onto a grass verge to catch the number 1 into Shepton Mallet. So I think we need to go through that carefully. Mark Harper, as long as he's in position, he will be, I think, quite a bit longer yet, is very keen on disability. There is a disability and equalities plan at the department. We are having some problems with keeping our rail replacement services by First fully accessible at the moment. That's something I'm taking up with the National Board. But I think equalities and disability is something that Mark takes very seriously. And then on the finance, well, Louise Haigh, if she's the minister, is Secretary of State, is going to change things. We are going to have a 4-year spending review in November, and we're also looking at legislation in the first 100 days to look at re-regulation of the bus industry through franchising and renationalisation of the rail network over 5 years. So,
David, I'm going to stop you here because there's quite a lot you've asked.
My final point, Richard, was to say that obviously I think we need to lobby regionally to make sure that we get the best results of the spending review. So that's very important for the South West region. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thanks, David. And on the CCTV, I might point out that we've worked with partnerships of the town councils across the region to keep that running. So I think a lot of thanks to the town councils on that. But I'll pass over to Natasha to try and digest some of those points.
Yeah, I think I would just say, yep, some good points there. Thank you for raising those. I have noted them as we've been going through, and yep, we will take those on board and consider those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. I'll go on to Councillor Mansell. Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Natasha, for the report and the presentation, which was helpful in putting it into context. I've got some comments and a suggestion. Now, possibly I'm missing something, but I realised that when reading through that I didn't actually understand what was the core bus network. I don't think it's made clear in the document what is regarded as the core network, and I think that would be helpful. And I'm particularly raising that because I think it's become apparent to me that there are clearly services outside of the core network which haven't been receiving the same attention, and I believe that needs to be made clear in the plan, because it feels like some routes are just sort of slipping through, and well, to be honest, they're declining and continuing to decline. And you won't be surprised to hear that the route I've got in mind is the 25. But I'm sure there must be others in similar circumstances elsewhere in Somerset. Now, it particularly occurred to me in section 4 on page 52, deliverable 3. And I was looking at that, and it's referring to the core network and how that's going to be provided and some enhancements. And as I say, that service is not provided on all routes. And so it struck me that what appears to be needed is for a reference to secondary routes to be made. So secondary routes for small towns with rural feeder services. Now, I hope they would be supported and developed, but whatever wording is felt best to go alongside them, whether it's just providing secondary routes for small towns with rural feeder services, but I strongly feel that they need some attention, which they're not getting, and at the moment they're declining. And how far will that decline go? Some of us think that decline has already gone too far. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Natasha?
Yes, thank you. And again, yeah, some good points raised there. I think in terms of the core network, I think we need to do some work on that, and that will develop in kind of alongside the local transport plan and the place-based solutions, which will help define what the core network should be, or where it should be serving, and where, like you say, we have those secondary routes. So we want to make sure that whatever we develop there is reflected in the local transport plan. So hopefully over the next year, that will start to emerge, and we'll be able to define that a lot better.
Okay, thank you. I've got Tony Rees. I'm totally sure if he's a board member, but I'll
Yes.
indulge Tony anyway.
Yes, he is, Richard.
He is, sorry. Apologies, Tony. I've not got the list of people in front of me, so.
I have a specific question about QR codes in Taunton. David Northey says there are none anywhere near where he lives, the railway station in Kilkenny. But on a more general note, I'd like to say, again, a big thank you to Natasha and the team for producing that report. It is a very good summary of where we are. It is the sort of thing that we have asked for from this meeting. So something less detailed and less polished would be good to share at each of these meetings as to how we're actually doing on the enhanced partnership. For instance, I was surprised to hear you say we haven't actually changed the age of buses, because I would have thought the new buses running the Park and Ride and the buses that they've released to be used elsewhere in Somerset would in fact reduce the average age of buses. And since it was a plan right at the beginning, it would be good if we could actually have some sort of response as to where we are, what the figure is. If you haven't the time for it, there are enthusiast groups all over Somerset who could probably tell you down to the minute the actual age of every bus, not only where it is and how long it's been since it was built, but where it's been in between. So I'm quite sure if we ask the right people, first, the operators ought to produce this information, but if we want to, we could actually suggest how we're actually developing. I was sorry to see from James that the regularity, the timeliness and the number of buses cancelled doesn't seem to be decreasing. I'm glad to hear they're working on it. But we would like I think as users, we would like this meeting to be able to say what has happened, what good things have happened, what bad things have happened, and what we're doing about them. For instance, last week we had new buses on the 68 bus, and I think some of Somerset's other bus routes taking wheelchairs. This is incredibly important for the buses that communicate with the station. It would have been I would have been much happier if this had been mentioned at the last meeting. We'd had 3 months to consider it, make the publicity available, have it as a major transport event last week. And I hope we still can have a major event, that we plan something that says, look, we now have a link to the bus station, link to the railway stations that is supportive of those who need wheelchair access. And it's things like that that I think this meeting can be involved in actually saying we need to do these things. I've asked a couple of times, and I'm glad to see it's in the review there, when we will get the new demand responsive services at Somerton and Somerton Hub. I've read a lot about DRT services, how many of them have failed, and the ones that were successful were the ones they spent 3 months before implementation talking to people, having events in local villages, inviting people into the centre to see the facility, talk to the people who will be taking the requests, talk to the drivers, getting to know them, so that when we actually introduce it, it's done with a wave of publicity. We're trying to attract new people onto buses, new younger people who need these DRT services. I always say Slinky is one of Somerset's best kept secrets. Sorry, I'll finish in a moment. Slinky is one of Somerset's best kept secrets. With this new mobility hub, as you say, we need to try it. Your report shows lots of things you'll do to review it, but the review and the planning needs to include all the things we're going to do before we get there. There's a date there of March next year. I'm hoping that's good and it won't get delayed, but as soon as you're sure of it, we need to start publicising it. And those are the sort of things we hope will happen at this meeting in future. I'd like to see a plan for Yeovil, the new Yeovil bus station. Can we invite architects, schools to draw up new plans? They ought to be written into the planning rules for the bus station before the site is sold, not after it's done and a new owner has the feeling that he's going to build masses of houses. It needs to be written in now that there is a plan for the new Yeovil bus station that will come up. I see on your plan it says 2029. I would hope it's sooner than that. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I will get Natasha to sorry, somebody's got their mic on, so that's better. Natasha, just quickly on a couple of those points.
Yes, so I think, yeah, again, all good points, and we will try and produce those summaries and give much more kind of regular updates at the meetings, and we do welcome suggestions on what you'd like to see at the meeting. So yeah, please feel free to send those through to us. In terms of vehicle age, there is information in the BSIP document, so we have collated that from operators, and yeah, I think whilst the actual average age across the whole fleet hasn't changed, which we were expecting to see, the actual makeup, like I say, has improved, and we're seeing that the older, kind of more polluting vehicles have been removed from the network, and we've now got kind of a lot more Euro 6. They might be still kind of older vehicles, but they're actually Euro 6 engines, so much cleaner kind of technology and reducing the carbon emissions in the network, which is really good. And yeah, we'll try and keep you as updated as we can with things as and when they come to fruition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I've got Peter.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks to his team, and specifically Natasha, for the huge amount of work which has gone into this document. one does have to question the extent to which it's going to be applied, because ever since Boris disappeared off the scene, the government doesn't seem to be allocating any significant investment, extra investment to buses. And if there is a change of government, it's going to be all about bus franchising. And we in the Somerset Bus Partnership have done a lot of work on bus franchising, which as soon as it becomes relevant to Somerset, we'd very much like to share with you. Our concern, which I'm sure you in Somerset share as well, and the bus operators as well, is that we've introduced a £1 fare in Taunton as part of the BSIP, but the bus priority lanes, and especially the Taunton Mobility Hub, haven't yet been delivered. They are slowly coming through the pipeline, but it's likely that the £1 fare is going to disappear before we see those. We're not sure what's going to happen in March of next year. So there seems to be a lack of coordination by the very nature of these BSIP allocations going on with trying to improve and turn Taunton into a bus town. One just has to hope that the government planning of investment in buses will take a longer term view than what we've seen with BSIP this time. I echo the comments that David Redwell has made about the importance of cross-boundary. We know that's important around the whole of the perimeter of the county. Quite how that fits into core routes, I don't know, but I'm sure it's something that Natasha and her colleagues will be looking at. But some of the most important routes in Somerset are cross-boundary. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Peter. We do take it on board. It's not necessarily quite all that simple just to bung a bus route in. So I kind of, we've been working hard on various things simultaneously, but things don't always just appear as if by magic. There's a lot of work that goes behind these things. So we do work hard on trying to do a joined up, holistic look at things, but we have to take time where it's necessary. I'll just bring Natasha back in one more time, I think.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you, Peter, for your comments. And like you say, we will bear in mind those cross-boundary services and how they fit into the wider core network once we're reviewing that as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, that was a good discussion there, I think. And I'd just say I really appreciate the work that Natasha and her team have put into this BSIP 2024 document. It's I think it reads really well, which is, I think, will be a determining factor in the future. Right, I'll go on to point 9, which is you, Peter, again. So this is an update from the bus users and stakeholder groups. So I'll leave it with you, Pete.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd just like to reiterate our real appreciation to First South and First West of England for getting into a dialogue with us. As has been alluded to, we do have a meeting with a management team at First South on Friday to talk about the much discussed 25 and 28 routes, and to see what steps between us we might be able to agree as being positive next steps. That's all very encouraging. and I think has come out of the enhanced partnership approach and has been very much encouraged by Somerset Council, particularly by John Perrott. So consultation is ongoing and it's developing. We've just gone through one of our twice yearly timetable changes. It has to be said, and it has been said, that it was particularly confusing this time, especially in the north of Somerset, with buses emanating out of Bath and Bristol changing on the 7th and the 8th, and in elsewhere in Somerset on the 13th and 14th. Hopefully that will be overcome going forward. It just makes it an extra confusion to bus users who are already somewhat confused by the nature of these bus timetable changes. Because when they go to the bus stop, when a bus user goes to the bus stop, they discover that the bus times are not accurate. And so on the 6th, 7th, 8th, or the 13th or the 14th of September, they go to the bus stop, and unless it's South West Coaches, who have done an exceptional job in changing their bus times, none of the bus timetables at bus stops are accurate. Now, there is no other transport mode at the point of departure accepts that it's okay to show incorrect times. And the bus industry doesn't necessarily accept it generally. In WECA, nearly all the bus stops have those bus times changed on the date or within 7 days of the timetable change. They should be changed at the time that those bus times are in place. And the WECA method is that they charge bus operators a cost for changing it. Sad to say that the Somerset approach is just to accept it's a problem for bus users. The fact that most of our bus timetables on bus stops are inaccurate, often with broken timetable cases or no timetable cases, is just something that Somerset residents have to put up with. Well, I don't think it's acceptable, and I don't think bus users think it's acceptable, and I don't think Somerset Council should think it's acceptable. I do acknowledge that Buses of Somerset are currently working very hard to get up timetables now, some 2 weeks after the event, but they're recognising the importance of it. First West of England, apart from on the 126 route, haven't yet changed their bus timetables, and it's simply not good enough. And then we look at printed bus timetables that people can have. Now, it's probably the minority, but it's still some 20% of bus users who rely on printed bus timetables. Richard Wilkins was at one of our bus stalls and saw people really appreciative that we were giving out bus timetables, printed timetables, and all credit to Buses of Somerset. They this time had got their bus timetable booklets printed in time, only just, but they were there, printed in time, and we were distributing them at our bus stalls across Somerset. And credit too to First West of England on some of their key routes. They've also printed bus timetables. But the reality is a lot of bus users can't get or don't get printed bus timetables. And it is actually those who are economically and socially disadvantaged often who are the ones who are most dependent on buses and most dependent on bus timetables. And it's a form of social exclusion that Somerset Council, and I have to say the bus operators in general, don't produce bus timetables, printed bus timetables, and don't put them at bus stops. And it is something we really do need to address and find a way of funding it. I appreciate Somerset now is saying it can't afford to do anything over and above its absolute essentials. But there are ways of funding this by going to bus operators. It is the way that West of England Combined Authority does it. We need to find a solution to this problem. One other issue I'd like to raise, and it has been only touched on so far, is Yeovil bus station. Now, this is a really big issue. Linda Snelling and I have talked to prospective candidates, MPs, councillors. I've spoken to the Minister of Transport about this, and we've talked to a lot of people in Yeovil too. This is an important issue, and it's also an important issue for bus operators. I'm led to believe that the solution is now in Somerset Council's hands, and I would have thought that it would have been appropriate for a statement to have been made at this bus advisory board about the about the Yeovil bus station. We certainly do need information about it. We would like to be consulted by Somerset Council. I hope Richard will confirm that we will be consulted, because it is an important regional hub, not just for Somerset, but for Dorset as well. And we need some clarity as to what is going to happen in the redevelopment of that part of Yeovil, and particularly the bus station. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. It is really useful that bus users are now listened to and given a voice. Some might feel too strong a voice. I hope that's not the view, but thank you for the opportunity. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity to raise two really important issues for bus users, and particularly bus users in Yeovil as well. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Right. Sorry. Thank you, Peter. Okay. I think there's been lots of discussion over Yeovil bus station, and we've given a lot of answers that we can at the moment. I'm not going to go over it again, and when we do have more to say about it, of course we will, but there's a lot of factors in that. I'm going to move to action number 10, which is any other business. So I've got Tony.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I would like to say a lot more about Yeovil bus station, but we don't need to say it here. We have a month to sort the problem, and it needs sorting. I would like to raise one other issue, which I have mentioned before, but it comes up again and again. It's come up this week. A major road in Yeovil is due to be shut, possibly for up to 3 months, starting yesterday, according to the roadworks notice. Now, again, the first we hear of it is that somebody sees there's a roadworks notice, and we're told the road is going to be shut. I don't believe anybody has talked to the bus operators. I don't believe anybody thought about talking to us as the users when this road was going to be shut. Henford Hill is due to be closed. It's an unspecified period, but the roadworks statement says from yesterday to the middle of July, I think it is. We really need to be in on these discussions before these decisions are made. The operators need to be involved, and the users need to have a way of discussing with whoever is planning roadworks to be able to say, this is not acceptable, or is there a way around it? Can buses be allowed through, or whatever? So can I once again ask that a plan is set up so that when roadworks are planned, we are involved, and particularly the bus operators are involved?
Right, I'm going to bring John in on that point. Are you there, John?
Yep, I'm there, Richard. Yeah, so certainly we'll pick this up with the roadworks team, because we should be getting notifications of all the roadworks that happen, and we should be sending those out to operators in advance. So I'll check Henford Hill to see what the issue is there and whether that was missed and why it was missed, if that's the case and operators don't know. In terms of obviously advising people earlier, we will have to talk to roadworks team about how we can do that, and I think Jonathan has been on certainly one of the bus partnership calls, Tony, before, I think, to discuss this, but we'll have another look at that to see whether or not they can give more advance warning. And I don't see why we couldn't send the bus partnership copies of road closure notices as we get them. Some of them come in very late. Literally, we will obviously get emergency closures and things like that. Some of them do come in obviously with a lot more notice. I don't see why they couldn't be shared with the bus partnership, particularly. I'll check that with the roadworks team, but let's see if we can improve that notification a bit, certainly. But I'll look into Henford Hill and find out whether we got information out to operators, and if we didn't, why we didn't. So I'll look at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. And David.
Thank you, Richard. So a few points I wanted to raise. We had a meeting the other evening with young people from across the Bristol and across Somerset area. First were there. But the issues they raised was interesting. Some of the issues they raised was about antisocial behaviour on the late night buses, and issues around cleanliness was another point they made, Richard, which was very interesting. These were issues around 376, that corridor, and the Bath Wales corridor at Taunton and Bridgewater. The other thing they raised was the unsafety of the local trains, which was, and again, that applied to the Bristol Taunton line in particular, the local services, not the ones that Richard Gibson runs, the intercity ones. That was also of concern. They also talked a bit about drugs on the local transport network, which appears to be in the wider Somerset area. But also about revenue protection, and First Group PLC is rolling this out across their network, and they felt the enforcement of some of the revenue protection officers was quite strong. I think it might be worth talking, Richard, to first Wales and West and maybe South as to what the revenue protection rollout is going to be like in Somerset and how that's going to work, particularly on those core networks, as Police and Crime Commissioner, and issues around safety on buses is very much in the Secretary of State's mind. So those were some of the issues. The other thing I'm picking up from passengers who see Somerset as one county, and it is one county, just like Gloucestershire is. It's one county, three systems of government in it, three authorities. But we have First West of England and First South. They're all First PLC companies. We've got some rider tickets, West of England Plus, but you can't buy it on a Somerset vehicle. Well, if I'm staying at Breen, I don't know. I just want to use the buses. And they've all got First on the side, and they all say First Group. The passengers don't understand this. Can we just sort this ticketing system out to make sure that you don't have to pay £2, £2 to get across Somerset, when there are tickets that cover Somerset on First Group? And then on ticketing, we need to try and pick up the issue with South West Coaches and their subsidiary Beeline and the other operators to see if we can create a county-wide ticket when tourism is on our screen, and also one that works with the rail system as well. On the membership of today's meeting, is interesting. I think there's a lot of Somerset Bus Partnership members that are appointed on here are no longer members. So I think that needs a quick review, because people like David Nordy have taken a major role there. And then on Yeovil bus station, all I'm going to ask is, yeah, we got a month. It's been ITN. It's been all of the national news. But Dorset, we're in Purdah. It's a local election in Dorset. But we do need to talk to Dorset. They were quite friendly the other night about sitting down with you, Richard, and trying to find a solution from Dorset Council, as was Peter McNaughton as well, and First Rail. So I think there needs, as I said to Bill Revels, some meeting after the Dorset elections to try and resolve how we keep the Yeovil operating at the moment. With every council's been hollowed out, we just need to work in partnership, find ways forward, and run as a new Somerset and work with the communities. But that's my points. But community safety, can we make sure on the BSIP that we talk to Young Somerset and with the North as well? Because that was a fascinating meeting with Sari organised it, but Rosa goes to those meetings as well. And Young Somerset and the student we were talking about earlier on is very much engaged in all of this, and we need to understand their views and their safety. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, David. I'll be interested if James or Robert want to come in on the ticketing aspect.
We've whilst you've been talking, we've been talking in the background. So yeah, we're a bit surprised by that. So we've already actually picked it up and we'll get it sorted.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for raising it.
Thank you, James.
And actually, this is what this board meeting is all about: is finding solutions like this. And it's brilliant you raised that. So thank you.
Just on that point, Richard, I think it has been mentioned 2 or 3 times, I think, today. Yes, we do have 2 separate companies operating in Somerset, but they are both First Bus. And at the end of the day, the customer doesn't see any difference. So ultimately, we need to be acting and operating as one operator, not 2 separate companies. And we will do everything we need to make sure that happens. And this is one example of that. So anything else where that's not being seen joined up, please do let myself or Rob or anybody else know, and we'll rectify it.
And fantastic
Richard,
to hear that.
Bring your workload up, but there is something you could help us with. James and Rob, we used to have a very good rail replacement service with full accessibility for disabled people. That, Richard, is not happening at the moment. So can we look at that with the first companies and the council, because they've been involved in making sure these blockades are planned and disabled people can travel and not left at stations? There are some cases, and I wonder if we could. Devon and Cornwall do it quite well. I think we need local authority engagement in it to make sure that the vehicles are low floor, and Somerset, and I think John Parrott did a lot of work this in the past to make sure that our network and into Weckerland with our rail corridors, that we got a fully accessible transport network when we can't run the trains. And that's, of course, in the hands of First and Cross Country. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up, actually, David. I think that's a discussion that we will have to have, James and Robert and John. So we'll arrange something soon to see what we can do there. Okay, I think that brings us to the end, really. So the date of the next meeting is scheduled for the 25th of June, 2024, and it's good to hear from you all, and it's great to see that we're working as one big sort of team on these issues now. I think there's been a lot of improvement made across the board, actually, both from operators and the way in which we engage, both as a council and as a Somerset Bus Partnership. So I'd just like to say thank you everybody for attending, and we will see you in at the end of June. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.